the man who needs no introduction is here. And I'm really excited to start a conversation here and then also open it up to a lot of questions. So you all better get ready to ask for a good portion of things.
Okay.
But I wanted to start off with just a few personal questions and kind of dig under the hood into who is Dave Evans and what makes him tick.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
And in line with Sarah's earlier questions, do you chase butterflies?
I chase butterflies. I mean, I've certainly gone after things that couldn't get my hands on. You could say the thing, I mean, the butterfly we currently landed in this conversation, I started working on accidentally about 43 years ago. I had no idea it was going to do it. That's the birthday. I was just trying to solve a problem and then sort of get stuck.
And along that journey, you've had a lot of people. Tell us a little bit about who's your family, who walks with you.
Okay, so so I grew up in Southern California. I was the youngest of 3 kids. My father died when I was 9. He killed himself when I was 9. That was very formative, sort of raising myself. My mom was there, and the family was intact. She was great, but for some reason I decided instantaneously, well, I guess I'm in charge of the universe, apparently. I'm difficult now. I was insufferable in my 20s. But I was taking my own counsel for a long time and trying to figure it all out. So then when I really did hit the wall, when I was a sophomore in college, the questions were just in here. That began the process that landed here. So along the way, so I was very close to my older sisters and my mom. My mom and I lived together for 4 years alone because my older sisters were 3 years ahead of me. They went off to college, so just mom and Skip. I'm David John IV, so we called me Skip Grant, and the dog were in the house. And that was it was a sweet time. It was a really sweet time. She died young of cancer, relatively young. So my parents were both done long ago. And then, so Claudia and I have been married 12 years for a second marriage. I have 3 kids, Claudia has 2. So we have 2 29-year-old girls, 2 34-year-old boys, 1 36-year-old boy, 4 married, 4 grandkids, 13 people on the radar screen, but they're not done.
So you do a lot of life design.
We do a lot of life design. Well, less at home than you might think.
My dad's a psychologist,
Yeah. You probably don't ask a lot of questions. I did recently, suggest to one offspring I will not name, who you do know you're having New York Times best-selling author on the question you're dealing with poorly in the house. You could ask him a question. The answer is yes, I do know that. Leave me all alone. Okay. Growing up, there was only once, true story, that a flip chart was in fact brought to the dinner table, and we have never stopped hearing about it. Oh yeah, did your dad bring a flip chart to the dinner table? Once, okay, one time. Golly, let it go. So there's that whole story, and so Claudia and I, so we moved to the beach house when we got empty nested, so we actually live in Santa Cruz, right on the coast, over the hill from Stanford, which is a horrible drive, but it's a great place to wake up. With the 2 dogs and the cat, and the sound of the seals barking in the distance. So I think that's the current baseball card.
Oh, that's a good lineup.
There you go. Yeah, no, it's good. They're good people. They're good people. Yeah. And I'm very close to my kids. We have a great time. It's the only thing I really wanted. I did not plan. I didn't want to make money. Didn't want to be a success. I wasn't even trying to change the world until later. But the thing growing up, and I think it's probably because my father's lost. I mean, the only thing I really wanted to be was a dad. I really wanted to be a dad. And far and away, that's the best job in town. And the truth is, if I honestly positioned my day job as kind of rent-a-dad. Office hours is really dad's in. Don't tell my students that. It really feels patronizing, but that's it. Okay.
Well, and so I've heard it not mentioned I've heard it mentioned a couple times that you have huge amounts of energy. Where does your energy come from?
I have no idea. I just, let's go do that. I mean, my brain has been dragging my body around for a long time. And so, it's just like, we're going with that, without you or not. No, really, I been happily blessed with being interested. I'm really easily interested. And it turns out interested is interesting. You know, one of the reasons, you know, I would get hired for years of being a freelance management consultant, you know, and contract after contract after contract. Turns out people actually really like people who think they're interested. So within a couple of seconds, it was pretty easy for me to actually, gosh, this is a really interesting business. How do you guys do this? So Hilary, tell me, man, I really don't. The Silicon Valley thing. You know, I actually am interested. It's not like I've really learned how to fake it. I can do that if necessary, but I'm actually really interested. And so it just doesn't occur to me to stop. So I really have no idea. Part of this is, you know, I think part of the challenge of life is learning who you are and then playing you to win. And one of the last things he wrote was Peter Drucker's Managing Oneself, in the great HBR top 10 classics of all time. You're in business school, you're sitting in those businessy seats, you know, which I hate. It's a horrible layout from a teaching point of view. But Drucker commented on, it is all of our sort of moral fiduciary obligation to understand who you are, what you're good at, how you work with others, how you can extract productivity from yourself, the way you think, the way you communicate, you know, in order to administer your productivity on behalf of the institution to which you align your resources, you know, whoever you're working with or for. That's your job. And then learn how they work and then optimize the interaction so that they get the most from you that they possibly can while you do the authentic job of delivering your productivity into the world. That's your job. And so it turns out one of the things I can count on is being interested in caring about the outcome and just show it out. So, which I use all the time. And I started all-nighters as a sophomore, and I'm still doing it. Doesn't work quite as well as it used to. The aftermath is a little uglier, but that's just a resource I've linked in. My wife sleeps for me. I go to bed after and get up before her every single day. I figure, like, you know, on net, we're about average as well.
And do you find time to play amongst all that? How do you play?
Sure. How do I play? I play. I'm a cyclist. I like to ride. I play with the dogs, and I have a little sailboat. I wouldn't call myself a sailor. That would be an upgrade. But I take my sailboat out and embarrass it in front of real sailors. So those are probably the things I like to do the most. I used to play guitar, but I didn't have time for that for years. Frankly, it's sort of fallen off. And now my son is such a good player, I'm embarrassed. And so those are the primary things I do. And you know, really, I really am at that point in life. I mean, I get to do what I care about almost all the time. You know, so my favorite thing is to talk to people about their lives. And now they actually pay me. Barely enough to cover the parking, as I understand it. That five-fold cut in income was kind of a hit, but it's a pretty good deal. So the work-life balance there can be great. You know, it's just my life.
Yeah. And here's another one. If you were a superhero, what would be your form of transportation?
Fly, too, absolutely. I would do the Superman fly thing. I still have flying dreams. I really want to fly. But when I was a kid, I can see the movie right now. When I was a kid, my flying dreams, it was really bizarre. And I had them both at the house I grew up in and at the beach house. We had my parents bought a little teeny tiny, you know, box for I think like $15,000 in a place called Carpinteria, a tiny little town southwest Santa Barbara, you know, in 1950, and held on to it. And so in either that neighborhood or the home neighborhood where I grew up, I would fly around the neighborhood, but I only flew 3 feet off the ground. You know, and I would just barely clear fences. And I have no idea, it's sort of like ground-hugging radar or something. But so most of my flying was low off the ground. And then there was another form of dream, which I've had frequently. And it's really one of my favorite dreams. I actually have that one again. Where it may very well be sort of like a foreshadowing of attempting to attain, you know, higher levels of spiritual engagement with God. But I would stand outside, and if I would just think freely enough, I would levitate. I would just go up. You know. So I would just sort of, you know, think freely into the sky. And then I would see how long I could sustain a state of free, in dream, I was dreaming, you know, and if I could stay free enough, I'd stay up for hours. And if I got distracted, I would sing. Why are you asking me these questions?
Well,
it might be cute, but it's not. Anyway, nonetheless, yeah.
well, I wanted to give people some things to get to know you, to put in context everything you're talking about.
Okay.
But I mean, the last question.
It just gets stranger the further you go.
Since you don't yet know how to fly in real life,
Yeah.
we know that you must be human. But I find myself sitting listening to you or listening to other people who are only a few decades ahead of me and seem to have their lives all totally figured out. And I look at myself as maybe decently put together sitting here, but you know, I'm kind of like a poor grad student working really hard to keep up with my super smart peers. And I don't know if any of you saw the poster of this little girl wearing glasses, kind of scratching her head. Like sometimes I feel like this little girl, a little confused. And so I was wondering if you could give us insight into a few of your moments in your story where, from a perspective now, it could seem like, oh, of course that made sense, but at the time, it wasn't.
You didn't at all, yeah, sure. How much time you got? So yeah, let's visit when Dave screwed up really bad, or it didn't work out at all. Like, so not what I had in mind. You know, well, but that's so not what I had in mind. So you know, the famous apocryphal story about Hemingway and the six-word story, right? So theoretically, there's a bar argument in Cuba. You know, how short can a short story be and still be a short story? And Hemingway says 6 words. You know, so he goes, oh, I'll bet you. So he takes the bet. You know, and theoretically, that's this resource that turned into the published story that he wrote. The 6-word story, which many of you know, which is for sale, baby shoes, never worn. There's a whole story there. Yeah, for sale, baby shoes, never worn. So that's a short story. And so people caught up on that. And this idea of the 6-word story, some depth psychologists even said, gee, what if we did 6-word narrative stories? What's your 6-word story? What's your 6-word story? And there's a group of people that have been collecting people's life 6-word stories, 6-word life stories, and publishing them as anthologies. You can actually get them on Amazon. And I think the first of a number of those anthologies was entitled "Not What I Had in Mind," which apparently is a deeply human experience, because this thing called reality just keeps going with or without your input. And so let's start out. So the first major screw up is, I went to college and I really did think that I thought I wanted to be a marine biologist, which is really just, I've been at the beach a lot as a kid, and I really loved the Jacques Cousteau TV show. And literally my thought was, hey, Jacques is getting old, somebody's got to captain the Calypso, might as well be me. I had not actually done the homework to notice that his sons were on board. And probably had an inside track and spoke French and everything, so there's a lot of that. That never really came about, and then I go to Stanford, it's a very long story as to how badly I screwed that up. I mean, literally in terms of, I didn't do anything I teach. Nothing in the book, nothing in the class did I actually implement. If you could do it more ineffectively as an undergrad, I'd like to see you try. I had a great time in college, don't get me wrong, but God, did I blow it. In terms of research utilization. So, do I really want to be a marine biologist or not? Of course, 30 miles down the road in Monterey is the Hopkins Marine Station, run by Stanford University. Hey, why don't we call them? Now I'm too busy. Never went, never talked, never did anything. I'm like, what's it actually like? I don't know, I'll just take molecular biology, which is the only thing they offer, but it says bio in it, so it's got to be great. Training seals to sing is just like, ripping the mitochondria out of his home. Sure, that's the same thing. And after literally 2 quarters in a row, when your lab TA says to you, now Dave, we'd like to have a chat. Sure, what's up? We'd like to recommend you drop the major. You're no good at it, and you're bothering everybody. The only thing you're any good at is arguing for your grade, which, by the way, you don't deserve. So we'd really like you to quit. Please quit. And the first time they said that, I said, you can't talk about that. Why receive input from people who actually know something? So I would prove them wrong, by continuing to be incredibly unhappy in the bio major. And so I did that for a while, and so that kind of thing just goes on and on and on. Now, I will say in terms of how big changes occur, is it always top down, like have a good idea, implement it, do it well, and all comes out? There's inside out, there's outside in, and there's accidental, and they all work. As a management consultant, of course, all of life is described either in a 2x2 matrix, where I can get you from the bottom left to the top right for only $500,000, follow me. Here we are, you're here, you want to be there. The issue you brought up, there's really 3 ways to think about that: bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3. Let's unfairly oversimplify that, and I'll move you to bucket 3. So that's pretty much management consulting right there. You can leave now. That's sort of the whole thing. And by the way, oversimplifying things into implementable models is a useful exercise. I'm not dumping on management consulting entirely. But attempting to artfully, implement oversimplification really is a worthwhile task. But what I was trying to do was get somewhere, and I wasn't really getting anywhere at all. And so there's bottom up, like just what's in front of you. There's top down, I've got the strategy, or what I always call strategic opportunism, which is like I have something in mind, but I'm really going to value a specific circumstance, or the specific circumstance, or the vehicle that will allow something to come into being. And as time has gone by, I've become pretty committed to being a strategic opportunist. At this point in my life, my conviction, my attraction to the possibility of getting anything done at all, that might actually stick for like a week or 2, is so high. It is so hard to do anything. Wanting it my way as opposed to wanting it a way that might actually work, that's a no-brainer decision for me. I spend no time agonizing, I wish it was in blue. I like blue better, Green's on sale, dude, go for it, let's go. So it's really about execute. That's why I ended up in higher ed, because they were willing to dance, which was a surprise. So the disruption was, I was on scholarship, I was running out of time and money, it was junior year, and it was time to go. There was no more money, because my dad, we didn't have much money, so you will be done in your 12th quarter, without a degree or with, whatever, we're done, we're out of there. And so I suddenly realized, holy cow, I'm about to finish a bio degree I can't stand, so I went home, this is a bit of a story. So I went home at the Thanksgiving weekend of my junior year, we're in the course system like Army, and I suddenly realized, oh my God, the Monday I get back to school, I have to register for the winter quarter classes, I've got 5 quarters left to go, and I would like to have a degree that isn't bio. I think I'm out of time. Whatever I take this winter will be the start of the finish of the degree that I will get. So I have to decide. That occurred to me the Friday of the Thanksgiving week. Really think about it. Very, you really want to hire me for strategic planning. So, so I sat down on Friday morning, the day after all the festivities, and at the kitchen table, and I got out the course system degrees, back when it was a book, long before the web. And I said, okay, I'll read all the majors, this has been 62 majors, and I'll just grab the one that attracts me, and that's it, because I'm out of time. I won't care if it's a passion or the right thing or my career, just get a freaking degree and then figure it out later. But just get the degree, job well. So I read the whole course system degrees, read every one of the 62 majors, and the end of that was, I don't want it. And I went, that can't be right. That can't be right. I'm sure I missed it. Do it again. Read all 62. There's like 2 in the afternoon. I started at 7 in the morning. And nothing. I go, God. Well, maybe there's a course I would be willing to take. I start reading hundreds and hundreds of course descriptions, which is taking a while. There are a couple of thousand, and I kind of, it's like tomorrow. And so my mother, bless her heart, said, well, honey, I've always thought you'd make a fine engineer. Duh. Which I knew. And then, of course, I was an, anti-war activist at the time, and, engineers just make napalm and kill people, right? That's what they do. And it's a very broad understanding of how the world works. not at all falling to the misperception of falling into my, uninformed biases. And so I jumped to the engineering school thing, started reading that, and there was one little mechanical engineering course that said you got to make a thing, you got to make a little machine that did something. I thought, well, that would be kind of fun. Okay, I'm done. So I walked into Dr. Reynolds' office, the chair of the mechanical engineering department, 8 o'clock in the morning, the Monday school starts, and I sit down and I go, Dr. Reynolds, I have my name is Dave. He goes, hello, Dave, what do you want? He said, I'm a winter quarter junior. I'm on scholarship. I have 5 quarters left. I would like to graduate in mechanical engineering. Is that something we could do? And he said, did you bring your transcript? I said, as a matter of fact, it is. Give it to me. So he gives it, and he's a very serious engineer. He says, okay. And he sits up and he grabs a quadrille pad, and he has my transcript, and he starts writing. And of course, there's an degrees out. He starts writing. 45 minutes. I'm pretty sure he's forgotten when he's doing his homework. And about twice I go, Dr. Reynolds, he goes, I mean, no conversation whatsoever. And then he goes, okay, slams the book closed, rips off the sheet, goes, do that. I go, what's that? He says, that's your mechanical engineering degree. I'm your advisor. Come to class at 9. Gotta go. Bye. That was it. And I'm taking advanced thermodynamics concurrently with freshman physics. I mean, it was really confusing. Much longer story than you want, but the whole point being, it's when you get up close, it's really messy. I mean, I had the faintest idea what I was doing. I was a firefighter. The fire department had employed students on the side, and that was the best financial aid job on the university, which I had because I was one of the most broke kids. And we had a guy that was pulling box alarms every hour on the hour from 2 to 6 in the morning every single night. And you couldn't not send any truck. And because I was the senior guy, I was the most senior student, I was on the cool truck, and the cool truck was the one that went. So I got up every hour, every other night for weeks. And I'm taking the thermodynamics class at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so what I did is I sat right there. Which name's Winnie. So I sat right where Winnie did, because if I'm right in front of the prof, I won't have, the chutzpah to fall asleep in front of him. Well, that did. So, Mr. Evans, are we boring you again? So it was really a lovely experience. Just awful. And I barely survived. And then, and I really had no idea what I was doing. I had just no idea what I was doing. 5 minutes after a test, I would look at my handwriting in the blue book on a test that I had actually passed. All I could recognize was the writing. I'd sort of memorized the equation for about a minute and a half. The stickiness factor of most of the stuff I learned was 5-10 minutes. It was immensely badly managed educational process. But I eventually survived. And then I came out with a master's degree, paid for by Chevron Research. I was a designated Stanford energy fellow. I was ready to solve the energy crisis. I even found a passion in my graduate year. I actually realized, mechanical engineering guys, they're the ones that actually solve the energy crisis. Cool, I'll do that. Let's go, Jesus rules. And then nobody said, by the way, nobody wants to for 4 years. So I got, I had a bad idea thoughtlessly. Finally got beat out of it too slow. Had a random idea driven by nothing but deadline and running out of money. Got immensely fortuitously lucky and found a deep passion that I was good at, I was prepared for, the world needed desperately, but nobody wanted to play. Watch what you wish for passion for. Then feeling totally ripped off by God, like, what'd you get me all cranked up about this for if you know we're going to play? So my theology of the will of God gets really stressed. And then it takes me 2 years to get over that, and I promised myself I won't fall into high tech, because that's so boring. Here's a computer. Want to see it again? That's it. That's the whole show. As a mechanical engineer, we do stuff like it explodes, it spins 180,000 RPM, it will fly. That's the stuff we do. It's really cool.
That's why I did it.
It doesn't even get warm anymore. They usually get warm. I'll stop right there, which was how I actually got into high tech. But there were things I did very on purpose. So the way I ended up actually getting to teach at Stanford was totally stealthy. Absolutely. It's not undercover by night. You knew exactly what I was doing. Pick blocks when they weren't. So that was very intentional. Other things were more opportunistic. Some things were purely accidents. My high-tech career began with a phone call to a solar engineering company, a little teeny tiny solar engineering company. I'm doing test engineering. I got a welding torch in my hand, putting together a test rig for a rooftop hot water heating system. And a guy from Apple Computer calls, and he says, "I'd like to talk to you." I said, "No, you wouldn't. You want to talk to the Dave Evans at HP." Dave Evans is a way common white guy name. We got like 6 months. You can get it in 24 packs at Costco. And I've been running into the wrong Dave Evans all my life. So I said, no, you want to talk to the Dave Evans at HP, not me. Hung up. And the phone rings back. He goes, "No, I want to talk to you." I go, "No, you don't. Don't bother me." And he says, "By the way, this is not an effective recruiting technique." That's how high tech started. So a lot, so some things were intentionally thought, and then along the way, some things flip around. Now I didn't go to Apple, and that ended in 14 interviews with Apple, and then they offered me a job, and I took it. And it's hard to know whether or not they were more surprised that they made the offer, or I was more surprised I took it. But that was, and the reason being, because Plan B after the energy thing didn't work out was, well, okay, I'll go do biomedical devices, which was the other thing I'd done research on. In fact, I was just about to land a job as the entry-level product manager on the first ever cauterizing scalpel. Scalpel that can actually cauterize, as you go along, rather than have all kinds of clamps and bleed like a sieve all the time. That was a really big deal. Fine, let's go save some lives. Let's get any job. And then the phone rings. It's Apple. Don't bother. And then make this offer, and it was so not what I wanted to do. But I was initially, solve the energy, save the seas, solve the energy crisis. Then it was, then it was going to be okay. We'll save lines as best as we can, and then write code. And then I was the fourth guy on the Lisa marketing team that preceded Macintosh, and so they very confidentially told me what they had in mind, which was this easy to use computer thing. And so I became the world's first mouse product manager. And I went, oh, I actually don't care about that technology at all. True then, true now. But this happens to be a circumstance where I believe that a game is about to be changed. I'm interested in game changing. I think that game deserves to be changed. And I'd really like to watch game changers change in a game. Somebody just gave you a front row seat. I mean, if you got a backstage pass to a U2 concert, even if you don't like them, you would go. Like, Bono wants to talk to you. No. You would do that. So, and I said, am I gonna kick this opportunity out just because I don't like the technology? And I looked at the compromise involved, and I thought the potential for lots of things I did care about. To be things I could be involved with in that organization, despite the fact that the technology is immensely boring. That was a worthwhile trade-off. So I really had a hard time discerning. Do I really believe that, or am I conning myself into it because I just had a very long private conversation with a guy who was on the cover of Time magazine? Am I fine? Look, I'm really good at stories, and so, I can con you better than you. So am I conning myself, or is this true? That is a really tough question. And I finally concluded it was true enough that it was worth a try. I guess 30 years later, I've got a tech career. So how things start and how they got going was almost never the way I was planning. Sometimes, but almost never.
Thanks for giving us an insight into that messiness. It makes me feel a little bit better about, as I'm starting out thinking about biomedical devices and energy engineering.
Somebody's got to do it. No, they're really interesting fields. And you still do cooler stuff. Right. Okay, what do you want to know?
Well, I'm curious, so many years after that, why did you get started into this design your life thing?
Okay. But is this interesting?
Yes.
Yes.
I live in a holy fear of boring people. So this does start with being just a hellaciously upset 19-year-old person. So, I had gotten serious about my faith at that point. And gotten a lot of push from mostly my peers in campus. I was involved in InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and I was working in a local church, and a lot of people said, hey, you should go to ministry.
This is in undergrad?
Yeah. I was on university exactly as a sophomore, just like against the rules. Clearly you should be in the ministry. Kind of going, all these people pushing me in the ministry, but no sense from God to pull. And I thought, if there's any calling you shouldn't give yourself, it's to be in the ministry, which I have a high regard for. I don't think that's the deal. I think I'm going to go be a regular person. And then
A regular Christian.
No, a regular person. I mean, I'm just going to be a person. That's the starting place. And do that thing that everybody else does, which is just go try out for the human project team, the ongoing creation project, and see if you can't get on the team and do something. And what is that? And the thing that made me crazy was that I was a very inarticulate Christian at the time. Inarticulate about my faith. I didn't know much, but I didn't need to in order to make the observation that was self-evident. Because what I call the transitive law of obviousness in retrospect, it wasn't very clever, but they told me God loved me. And that my life was of incredible value, which was unavoidably true because Jesus died for me. In fact, they say, it was just you, he would have come in. So apparently my life is immensely valuable. Got observation number 2. I will probably be like everybody else I observe, like all you people and all the people throughout history, and spend the overwhelming majority of my human energies doing this thing we call work. Whatever your day role is, whether it's for money or not, that thing you do out there in that engaged deal. That's like the biggest chunk of humanity, always has been, always will be. And the studies now show this very clearly because. If my life is immensely valuable, and everybody else's is too, and this is the biggest single chunk of my life, and everybody else's too, since, God says my life is valuable, and that's the biggest chunk of my life, then clearly this big thing is really valuable to God, so I should figure that out. So I do this thing called thinging in the world, how do you do that? In like with the God deal, because that was not part of the Stanford program. And it was not self-evident to me. So I go start running around talking to, older Christian people, men and women, in all walks of life, and say, hey, what do you do? I'm the regional manager of State Farm Insurance. Great, what's that got to do with the kingdom of God? Well, and to make a very long story, a little less long, I got horrific answers. Universally, almost. The doctors and the teachers got a pass because they're doing the human services thing. Well, I saved lives. Well, I formed young minds. Yeah. So helping professions and the rest of us just don't screw up. I try to do the best I can, and then I pay the people who are doing the important work. And I go, that doesn't make any sense. That just doesn't make any sense. It really was terrifying. So I'll amalgamate some very real people into a conversation. Let's say I'm leading on the insurance guy. Like, okay, no, really serious, Harry, what has this got to do with the kingdom of God? And he just stalls. This is the guy that teaches the men's Bible study on Saturday. This is like the stand-up guy. And I kind of go, well, look, okay, so what is it? What does your faith mean to your work? What does your work mean to your faith? What does that mean? And he says, well, I work as unto the Lord. I try to work as unto the Lord. I work as unto the Lord. Yeah. Great, what's that mean here? What does that mean? He goes, well, I try to be good to my people. I have a small staff in my original office, and I never cheat on my taxes. I never cheat on my taxes. So great, so you're not a jerk and you don't steal. Okay. That's it, that's the bar. That's the Christian distinction. You're not a jerk and you don't steal. I know a lot of faithless people cover that pretty. You got any more from me? Are we done here? Is that it? And so I was saying with another guy, it's nice talking to you, young man, but I really want to leave now. And then one guy just breaks and he gets really upset because I was real honest. And he kind of goes, look, what do you want from me? The boss has got me Monday through Friday. I'm doing the best I do not sleep with people I'm not married to. I haven't played golf in months. I'm in church every Sunday. What do you want from me? True story. And I'm 19, and I'm standing there, like this, and my honest thought was, oh, whole lot more than that. I mean, he was really mad. Because the scary part wasn't how much the answers sucked. The scary part was they were okay with it. They had somehow made a deal with the devil or themselves that, yeah, the thing I claim is the most important thing I believe in and drives the essence of the reality of who I am as a person, my faith in God, and the thing I spend all my energy on, you know, what do they have to do with each other? I have the faintest idea. I'm just hoping I'm not doing it anymore. You know, the parable of the sled goes, okay, I heard you're a hard man, I didn't want to lose your money, I buried it in the backyard, I didn't lose it, don't blame me, don't blame me. And that guy gets beat up. I mean, life is not about not making a mistake. As Luther said, sin boldly. What's he talking about? He says, look, grace is not this nice thing that covers you. Grace is the thing that relentlessly demands of you. You are free. You are secure. I know you don't know. It might be a sin. Go get in the game. Go play. Live. I'm getting upset. My daughter Lisa goes, oh my God, here he goes. So that's who we're supposed to be. And so I wasn't getting any help on this stuff at all. So the path to Stanford really begins in that 6 months or so of getting just beside myself. And I knew they were lying. I knew they were lying. Same thing with the university. Go to the career center. Boy, you know, I really want to talk to you guys about what I want to do. Great, well, let's talk about that. Okay. Yeah, so what do I want to do? They go, yeah, what do you want to do? I go, no, how do I figure out what I want to do? They kind of go, well, you tell us. I go, no, you tell me. And they go, we don't know what you want. I go, I know I don't know what I want. I want you to help me figure out what I want. And they're going to go, well, when you tell us, we'll help you get it. Getting it's easy. What do I want? That's what I want to know. You know, and that went nowhere. And I kind of go, you had no help at all. You know, I stormed out of there, you know. I walked out of a lot of places in a huff. And I really did. And it was very rude. Honey, is that not much better? Is it? Still rude. But the net of that was I finally found some people who were equally angry and said, you know, we know they're lying. And one guy goes, I heard there's a guy in Colorado who has a clue. His name is Gene. Can we find Gene? We should find Gene. Let's find Gene. We found Gene, Colorado Springs. Brought him out. Sat him down for a week and said, tell us everything you know. And that was the beginning of what began here. So, and that was directly in the Christian tradition of understanding the doctrine of work and the doctrine of vocational discernment, which nobody had told us. It was obvious in retrospect. I knew they were lying. You know, only Gene knew. You know, Gene was like God. And that's now changed. What we call the faith and work movement 40 years later, trying to overcome the unfortunate error of what's referred to as the sacred-secular gap. So I've been pounding away at that for a long, long, long time. But just on the way to trying to figure out what to do with my own life and land at Apple, and is that a right decision or not, and how do you experience the reality of the presence of God in the middle of a staff meeting? What's that really look like if in fact there is no distance between any place in the real world and where God is? What Abraham Kuyper would call, you know, every square inch is the Lord's. How do we experience that in a non-dualistic, non-secularized way? There is no secular reality. There are only some people in the world who are under-perceiving it by virtue of thinking in a secular manner. There's secular thinking. There is no such thing as a secular thing. There's only reality, and it's all God's all the time, whether or not God is acknowledged. That's what the Bible will tell us is true. So can I experience that rather than just really believe it? So I'm working on that, and as you can tell, when in doubt, as my wife says, if I'm awake, I'm talking. So, so teach, you know, so I had thousands of cups of coffee before work or a beer after on this question, because like, how many of you think your life is interesting? And what you want to do with the rest of it is like on your mind. Yeah, see, this comes up. It comes up all the time. So, you know, if you're sort of living out loud, like, I'm really working on this, they go, yeah, me too. You want to talk about it? Sure, let's go. I never say no to that conversation. So I've done that probably 10,000, 20,000 times. Literally. And started teaching stuff, first in churches and then elsewhere. And long way around, a guy named Randy, who was at Berkeley at the time, said, gosh, you know, you should teach a class at Berkeley. Great idea, Randy. Couple of little problems. I don't have a PhD, I'm not in the faculty, I have no curriculum, don't know anybody. Other than that, we're good, man. This is a great idea. He goes, no, you don't. There's this whole student-initiated system here at Cal called DECAL, Democratic Education Cal. I know how to rig the system for you. Trust me, if you want to do this thing, within days, a couple of students will call you and say, please come teach this class, we're good to go. You want to do it? I kind of go, okay. So I taught a class called Finding Your Vocation, subtitle is Your Calling. And about 50 kids show up and we teach this class. And I'm driving all the way to Berkeley from Palo Alto and from Santa Cruz, which is a horrible drive. And what do you have? Your mind once a week, and it completely ruins Mondays, and there goes a billable day. I just thought it was a ton of work to develop this curriculum. Never thought about teaching it. And it's the semester system, about week 13, kid walks up and he says, Dave, you're teaching next semester, right? Because my friends want to take the class. Once again, strategic thinking, far out, futurist orientation, like, well, that had not occurred to me at all. So I did what I call a Nehemiah prayer. So one of my favorite scenes in the scripture is Nehemiah, the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes. And as a cupbearer, you're the guy that tastes the food, so if somebody's trying to poison the king, you get killed, not him. It's a very important role. And it's also illegal, it's a capital crime to be unhappy in the presence of the king, because no one makes the king feel bad. So Nehemiah, who's a Jew, comes into his Babylonian captor, and he's so upset about the fact that Jerusalem is in ruins. He's down. And so Artaxerxes says to Nehemiah, why are you sad? Which already means you're dead. You're dead man walking. Right? And foolishly enough, Nehemiah answers him. Why would I not be? He said, I'm the city of my forefathers, Lazarus and so on. And then Artaxerxes says, what do you want? And then I love the sentence. Nehemiah says, so I prayed to the God of heaven and I said to the king. I prayed to the God of heaven and I said to the king. Now, I don't think what it looked like was, gosh, that's a really interesting question, Artaxerxes. Give me a couple of weeks, I'll go right back to you. Let me go back to my little cell and pray for some hours. This is a very important question, and I really want to give you a good answer. I don't think so. I don't think so. So I call a Nehemiah prayer one of those, you pray on the breath in and you speak on the breath out. So I did a Nehemiah prayer, and it's kind of like being in a car wreck. In a car wreck, that 4-hour movie in the quarter second between the time you heard the noise and your head went through the windshield. If you've ever been in a car wreck and you've got that really incredibly long slow-mo movie, it was like that. What I think what the kids saw was, what happened to me was, whoa, dude, I do not know we chatted about this yet. I did not see this kid coming. Did you send him? What do you want to do with this? And silence. And for some reason, these conversations, God often sounds like a Jewish comic from the Poconos with me. And I go, so, should I do this some more? And heaven kind of sounds like, what? If not you. So I said, okay, deal. Here's the deal. All right, you send them, and I'll come. You send them, I'll come. Is that a deal? Here it goes. Deal. That's my experience of it. And then I kind of go, yeah. 14 semesters later. Yeah. So I just kind of got pregnant with this thing. I thought we were just on a date and now we're having children. And, it really was that way. And then the Stanford thing came off of that. So Stanford occurred was my buddy Bill Burnett got this new job as the executive director and thought, that might be a way to sneak on the camp. I wonder what Bill's thinking. Let's just go chat with Bill. So I went to chat with Bill and share what I was doing. He goes, "It's a great idea. Let's do this thing. We should start in the fall. We'll prototype it this summer. I need a proposal on Monday. Let's go." I thought it was the first of 10 long, slow lunches over the course of a year. He started to figure out what running the design program at Stanford meant, and we sort of got to know each other better. We knew each other in business, but not really personally. I was astonished by his readiness to get going, and so I just, I jumped on the bus and went, and now I'm an educator. And the thing took off. Pretty darn fast.
Really?
A mere 10 years later, it's working reasonably well. My age does seems fast. So that's where it came from. They were almost all the really big things were one thing at a time. Now, if I had sat there in 1999, which was before I talked to Randy over at Cal, and said, "Gosh, I think it ought to be the forefront of a future sea change in higher education where social emotional learning is validated even within the secular institution, and the possibility of doing young adult formation is regained in a post-enlightenment reality, despite the fact that faith-based organizations can't do that anymore. I wonder where I could do that. What might be a validated methodology within the current meta-narrative and the zeitgeist that has the capacity to allow value integration to occur, but look agnostic on the surface in a way that slips the drugs in before anybody even knows it's going Oh, I know, the Stanford Design Program. I'll come at it from the side. Over at Berkeley, I'm going to do this thing. Not in a million years. Now, once I got to Stanford, it was totally Machiavellian.
And would you give us a little insight into, I mean, you mentioned how slipping in the drugs. Last
Yeah.
night we were chatting a little bit about the who am I question and connecting your beliefs and what you're doing.
Yep.
And how that's your sneaky way of getting into people's hearts. Will you let us in on that?
Okay, so there's the sneaky part with Stanford and the sneaky part with the individual. Remember the latter first?
Yeah, I want to know the...
How do I sneak up on individuals? Well, okay, so if I, we teach all these courses, designing your Stanford design. So designing lots of the big ones, so to speak, the hallmark course that people take. Now, if we called that, the values integration self-coherency class. All 4 classics and philosophy students, and I would have a great but that is what we're doing. So what I do there is, I'm just trying to learn off a really good teacher named Jesus, and he said these things like, look, the physician cannot heal the well, okay? Which reminds me that Jesus, has accepted God's decision to give people free will. If you don't want help, I can't help. I can't help you to want help. We do a big event. There's a book signing. At least 2% of the parents will go. So how do I design my child's life? You don't. By stopping that right now. You can't do that. It just doesn't work. It'll backfire. So what we look for is what is there? What is an existing draw, motivation? The way I would interpret it is, what is the Holy Spirit already animating people, whether they understand it or not, that we can lean into? Right? So if I agree with the Quaker orientation, there's a light in all of us. I mean, every single conscious being on the planet is just somewhere on the journey to God, on a trajectory either toward, off angle or away from it. We're all on the journey together in different places. Now there may be, it might be really important whether you've crossed a threshold on that journey called salvation or not, But frankly, what's more important to me is we're just all on this journey. So where in your journey, and its trajectory, its moment, its consciousness, its awareness, intentionality, is the thing that most leans into moving toward health and wholeness. And what can we do with that? Well, it turns out this whole what do I do with the rest of my life thing is like a really, really big question. Okay, so there's tons of energy there. In venture capital, we often talk about, here comes this new product, so this thing, hey, is this a painkiller or a vitamin? Right? Any VCs in the room got a painkiller or vitamin thing? So, they're both big industries, multi-billion-dollar industries, except the painkiller industry is like 10 times the size of the vitamin industry. Because what happens if I don't take a painkiller? My head's telling me my life is awful. What happens if I don't take my vitamins? It will just turn into Sunday. And nothing, because I'll do it tomorrow. So the urgency of that. So if there's something that people are in pain about, and you can help them with it, then that's great. Now, can I legitimately embed in the least confronting way? I'm looking for the intersection between the least disruptive way, i.e., my efforts to optimize the minimization of your likelihood of misperceiving what we're doing. I'm going to minimize your chance of getting this wrong. That's called marketing. Giving the truth is the best possible chance of being properly heard. Which means I have to anticipate the behavior, the culture, the orientation of the listener. I'm sort of crossing the line there. Welcome to the grown-up deal. You know, well, I just told the truth. Thanks for sharing. That's not very helpful. If I want to communicate, I got to take responsibility not just for what I say, but for what you hear, and then for what it means to you. That's dangerous business. You have to do it cautiously, but that's what responsibility is. So what might you hear? And if I go, okay, so this meaning-making thing, would you like to be meaningful? Yeah, I sure would. Okay, well, guess what studies show? Thank God for positive psychology. I now have data to say the obvious. Which is, you know, if I can interconnect who I am, what I'm doing, and what I believe, then my chance of meaning-making goes up. Would you like some of that? Yeah, sure. Okay, so write your life view, or, you know, write your worldview, write your work view, and then integrate it. You know, and half my students go, I don't have a worldview. No such thing, it's just inarticulate. You have a point of view, whether you know it or not. There's stuff that you don't know that you know. And here are the kind of things that come up in a worldview. Figure out where you come up with. You get 2 to 3 pages, do them all, do it. And they go, why? Because you'll feel more meaningful. Okay. You know, we just cut the date. And it turns out to be a very, very important exercise. So I'm looking for the easiest way. Look, if people do the right thing for the wrong reason, I don't care. I am not picky. As long as, if the wrong reason is evil and causes pain and agony, to fine. But doing the right thing for the right reason, I mean, come on. You know, let's just get there. And so I'm always looking for as much opportunity as I can to get where we can. That's the approach. So I'm really just a ruthless pragmatist.
Well, I've got a couple more questions, but I'm sure you all are really excited about asking them as well, and so I think we can open it up to some questions.
Boy, I can't wait to hear me talk some more. I know I
But you can make that happen.
did. Geez, I know. Here's our sign again.
Yeah. So when you're advising your students
Yep.
and your advice,
Yep.
I'm trying to get a sense for there's designing your life and then there's strategic opportunity, which seems in conflict. But there's also this notion of, especially for something like strategic opportunism, follow your dreams or your passion and sort of thing that leads to this conflating of vocation avocation you mentioned this morning. And have you haven't mentioned things like market forces around careers yet, right?
Sure.
Do you ever bring up that sort of thing?
Yeah, come at 3:30. We're doing the brutal reality module. I'm serious, actually. No, absolutely. Which is why, you know, step 0 in the design process is accept you cannot solve a problem you're not willing to have. The very first thing you do is empathize with the reality, including external forces, market realities, all that kind of stuff. So this is, you know, I mean, running around just in your head is a complete waste of time. Nothing happens in magical thinking land, other than having better reasons to be unhappy. I mean, it just doesn't work at all. So the design is brutally committed to reality. It's absolutely an existential experience. You know, quit thinking, do stuff. Go talk to the actual people. Life, wouldn't it be interesting to shut up and go do something? So really, it's really, if you get it, it's that way. Now, in terms of how strategic opportunism and design get together, of course, all design is saying is, look, you know, if you got a wicked problem, you don't know what you're doing yet, then let's go deeply understand the situation, empathy. You know, and then problem find, what is a problem we're solving in this space? I'm not even going to bring which problem I want to solve to it, right? That's what I had to see. I had what we would call an anchor problem when I came out of college. I knew what problem I was going to solve, which was entirely and singularly an inside-out expression of I've decided to save this problem, about which I knew actually nothing. I knew about the technology, knew about what it should be. I knew nothing about what was going on. You know, had I at the time would I have still done it, well, I needed a degree. I may have just held my breath just to get through it. You know, but it was not grounded in the reality of the external world at all. So we're very in favor of people living in reality. And so we can find the intersection and some kind of optimal nexus between what's the world actually doing, what's on your mind, what brings you joy or could grow into a passion. If we can get a trifecta there, that's killer. You know, but we just do the best we can. And then we iterate from there, Most of the time when you're in your 20s, the possibility of hitting it out of the park is almost impossible, because you aren't here yet. The neocortex isn't fully baked until you're 27. You know, if your mother said, well, you know, honey, why don't you wait till you're 28 to get married? Well, you know, that's not, if there's any of, I have one really wonderful mentor who I think the world of, and she doesn't do it. I try to give counsel, help you figure out what you think, not advice, tell you what I think. And Sharon, who I think the world of, only has one piece of advice: don't marry him until he's 28, because we haven't met him yet. There's really something to it, you know, and that sort of thing. So, you know, part of what I'm trying to do is help teach people how to grow into the person that can hear the rest of their own story. Did I answer most of your question?
Yes.
Good. I didn't get distracted. Yeah.
So I feel like there's a
Wait, you get to call him. You're in charge.
You.
So there's always a conflict between like see where you want to go.
Yep.
Especially like in your 20s, like it takes those like a long winding path to get there. So how do you like? What would you say to like finding the joy of the journey, or like being content with where you're at while still like striving for where you want to go?
I was sitting in a meeting, a business meeting, I still do look consulting, and an issue is being discussed. It doesn't even matter what. And then people were all getting upset. They were getting upset because, you know, is this really what I wanted to be working on, or what have you? And I remember myself, really, I really am older now. I'm 64, you know, and because as I heard them, this sounds so patronizing, but I want to be honest. They're talking and kind of go, oh, I remember worrying about that. Boy, that was a long time. You know, and I'm so glad I know. But somewhere along the line, I do not know when, so it's clearly in the rearview mirror. This thing I talked about strategic opportunism. My attraction to something that's worth doing that might even work so overwhelms, is this what I want to be doing? I worked on a big educational development project at Stanford, again, in the particulars, including a couple of young grad students, and this one young woman, we'll call her Hilary, this was exactly what she wanted to work. She was so excited, you know, getting her joint master's in education and MBA at the same time. And we had it all done, and go, hey, Hilary, how'd that go for you? She goes, well, you know, it was really wonderful. I said, I don't know, there's an awful lot of PowerPoint involved, a lot of administration. And I went, it's called doing the work, you know. Otherwise, people don't know what we're doing. Well, I just really like having the ideas. Like, yeah, that's great. And somewhere along the line, the gritty, grunty stuff, you know, I kind of don't even notice anymore. So I'm a little bit past the problem you're describing, to be honest. So how do you maintain enthusiasm for, you know, the pedestrianness of the current moment, you know, and it's not there yet-ness? You know, in theology, we talk about living between the comings, the already but not yetness, right? And Jesus says it's finished and everything's covered, except we're not there yet. So there's this paradox of already but not yet. So I think the way I would counsel trying to manage that is learning to befriend longing. So I'm in this present moment, and can I identify anything in it that's actually, in and of itself, intrinsically interesting, worthwhile, or efficacious to others? You know, it's just pure labor. You know, and it has a little something to do with the future I'm going toward. And then meanwhile, this zoom out thing, this, you know, what's it look like? You know, I'm still stuck in the forest of the flying monkeys, and I'm trying to go to the city of Oz. I can see the Emerald City in my mind, but I can't see it in reality at all. I'm not there at all. Nowhere near down the end of the yellow brick road. You know, and you can either have that be, I wish. Oh shoot. Are we there yet? Or, you know, it's this longing that I actually meditate on and hold as a gift that orients me, it animates me, and it reminds me that there's a bunch of interesting runway in front of me. You get to decide how to hold this thing. Now, longing involves pain. You know, there's the line, it's heaven all the way to heaven and it's hell all the way to hell. You've heard that cliche? How do we do that? How do you make it heaven all the way to heaven? I think it's holding that tension between the present moment and the not yet. and valuing them both, finding the gift in it, and not slipping off into the bitterness that comes from the not yet. It's a choice. It's actually a spiritual discipline, to choose how to see. That's the best counsel I have. Hard, it's really hard. It takes a lot of practice.
Talk about spiritual, but have
I
also
do.
been a degree in contemplative spirituality.
Sure.
How has that informed your journey and process?
Yeah, the degree in contemplative, the practice of contemplative. You're like, what? What's up with that? Really? From a liberal seminary. That's really simple. It's just another round of incompetence, rank incompetence. So I'm going, that comes from a very disruptive moment. I was a YMCA counselor for years, and was surprised, clipboard whistle, I'm just dangerous. And so I did youth ministry, so I'm doing junior high Sunday school. I'm teaching junior high Sunday school. And I'm teaching the Sermon on the Mount. Got 75 imagine you're all, 11 to 13. You're on the floor and you're really wiggling quite a bit. And I'm teaching this thing, and lo and Baumgarten, bless his heart, we're teaching, and I had just done the line about, be anxious for nothing. Consider the lilies of the field and the bird of the air. Be anxious for nothing. And goes, yes, Lord, what? And he goes, what's that mean? What's what mean? Be anxious for nothing. What's that mean? And what does be anxious? Be not anxious, or be anxious for nothing. It means not worry. It's not about worry. Oh, so just don't worry? That's all I mean? Yeah, that's all I mean. Okay, great. Then go on. Then, boom, hand goes back. Dave, what, love? When? When what? When do we not worry? I'm looking at my Bible and I gotta go, well, I think he means all the time. All the time. Yeah, so we're never supposed to worry. Technically, no. Yeah, well, huh? Okay. Are we done, Lauren? Yeah, we're good. So as I was saying, look, one more time. What? And he goes, Dave, how does that work? Well, this was really inconvenient because I'm standing there for all these kids, and I said, oh, shoot. And I didn't actually say it that way. And in my mind, it doesn't work. I have no idea how it works. It's a really good question you asked. Now, it's not appropriate as the elder in the church in front of 75 kids to answer that way. I still to this day do not know what I said. I said something that would sound like a Sunday school teacher, pretty sure. Actually bumped into, Long is now 34, at a reunion recently, came back and visited one of my sons, and I said, Lauren, do you remember that day? He goes, barely. I go, do you remember what I said? I have no idea what I said. And what happened there was I suddenly realized that that I had somehow along the way swapped Christianity for churchianity. I am the lay guy you want in your church. I can raise money, I can promote stuff, I can write the flyer, I can teach the class, and I'm free. It's a deal. And I'll work my butt up, because I do all that. And so I'm doing all this stuff. And I'm really good. I have a great time. I agree. I'm intellectually assenting to all these things, but the reality of it suddenly got away from me. And I went home, and this was really disruptive. And I thought, holy cow! I bet I'm just having a bad day. I'm having a bad day. I'm going to give myself a time. I'm coming back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow, same time. Year goes by. Doesn't work. This is a super secret. I don't tell anybody. I don't tell my wife. I don't tell myself. That this is going on. And suddenly I realized I don't really know. I may be losing my faith. And I'm pretty sold out on this faith. I'm pretty deep. So I don't know what to do with this stuff. And very long story, truncated down. I was pretty sure it had something to do with knowing God personally, not just intellectually. A buddy of mine named Clark, who's a physics guy / poet, makes a living in software because that's what they pay it for. likes to go up on top of hills and sit up all night and pray, and he keeps inviting me to go with him. I kind of go, oh gosh, Clark, I really need to change my shoelaces. I'm really busy that night. And I finally go to, and Clark's, lovely, and I love him to death, and he's just so strange. And I go, Clark, this is what's going, do you know what's going on with me? And he kind of goes, no. I go, do you know what I should do? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, he says, well, you need to learn to pray. And so, I go on a retreat, and long story short, I ended up saying, I think you need to really learn about this from people who know what they're doing. So I actually went to seminary to learn how to pray. So I have a degree in prayer. And because once you get it, the Christianity isn't about being a good boy and choosing the white, not the black. I mean, do any of you spend any time dealing with, good versus bad, right versus wrong stuff? It's all good versus good, right? I mean, it's the good versus the good. That's hard. Good versus bad is pretty trivial. Now you might be in a field where you're restraining the arm of the oppressor, or what have you. You're a good versus bad reality. But I don't do agony over good versus bad. That doesn't cost me any time at all. It's the good versus the good that I'm showing. That's discernment. Okay, so the Bible's not going to help me. I'm a marketing guy. Trust me. Give me any decision, I'll justify for it. Piece of cake. There's a lot of stuff in the book. We can get you anything you need. So now, what has God really done? What's really true? What's really wise? What's really in alignment with what the world's doing and who I am and all that stuff? That's discernment. And I have the faintest idea how to do that. So that's why I went back to school, because if I'm going to actually live this stuff, not just teach it, then I'm going to have to learn how to do that. And it was a great experience. It took me, it was 6 years between Lowen asking me that question and finally going to my first prayer retreat. I managed to avoid answering that question for 6 years. I'm a really slow learner.
Struggling with the job versus career versus
Calling?
idea.
Yeah.
Like how, for example, your neuroscientist friend would answer the work and faith question in a good way.
Sure. Were you on the things? So I talked, you do jobs, careers. You do jobs for money, careers for professional mastery, development. Callings for values integration or fulfillment or changing the world or obeying God or whatever you might call it. And that in career fields, those are perceived as parallel, differentiated, qualitatively different things. Not better or worse. I mean, lots of people in the world do jobs. And it's fine. Doesn't mean you hate it. We need the job done. You don't do it, because you want to become the world's greatest dishwasher. It's not a career. And it's not like, you had this vision that, the God's glory of reflectivity would be particularly instantiated through shiny dishes, and that's what totally makes your soul sing. When you see a shiny dish, you just drop your knees and weep. So that's your calling is washing your dish. So it's just a job, somebody's got to do it. And it may not be hateful at all, and people have done those kind of jobs gloriously. So the famous Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence, was a guy banging around the kitchen, rather ineffectively. And so you can do jobs, you can do careers, you can do callings. None of them are more or less capable of being an honest response to who God is in the world. And so let's take my surgeon who does it as a job, right? It would be technically a career, but he's essentially hit a certain apex, so he's no longer developing, he's just executing. And so if he does that, that sort of advanced job as a job, what would God say about it? Let's say here's a talented guy that found in himself a capacity, an aptitude, to meet a need, which he's meeting. And people go away well, and he goes home and feeds his family. Everybody's fine. What's the question? I mean, the fact that it doesn't necessarily illuminate him. It appreciates the brilliance of the brain and all that kind of stuff, But the stuff that makes him feel more alive, the stuff that really enlivens him or gets him shining, is completely otherly. It's poetry. It's art, the truth is he's an artist in surgeon's clothing. And this is why he thinks of it as a mechanic. I mean, I don't create things that are, you know, I'm not drawing stuff, I'm not making beauty that wasn't there before. I just fix broken stuff. It really deserves to be fixed. It's really cool when it's fixed and it works. The people are really appreciative. They really like this not dying or being unable to walk anymore thing. That's a pretty good deal. But it's a job. And that's fine. Can't make a living as a poet. I wouldn't want to do it anyway, because my poetry is weird and nobody's buying it. So that'd be a dumb idea. It's pretty simple. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So kind of going off that, so I guess looking back at your career and your jobs, how will you answer your 19-year-old self now? So like being a question like, what does your faith mean to your work, and what does your work mean to your faith?
Oh. I mean, how would I answer that? How would I help them understand that idea, or how would I explain my current circumstance as an example thereof?
The latter.
The latter. Okay. How does my current work relate to my faith and investment? Oh. You can't tell. Doing something wrong. No. The way I would characterize I do have a sense of calling. And the way I would characterize my sense of calling is that I'm just working toward there being more coherent adults walking around on the surface of the earth, any way I can get there. My observation is there are 3 large mentoring infrastructures that have potentially high leverage impact on the formation of those coherent adults, and they are the marketplace, higher education, and the church. And I'm deeply involved in all 3, and the reason I'm going long on education is because that's the girl that was willing to dance, which was a surprise to me. That may be shifting now. They're doing more stuff in the business world and in the church again, but nonetheless. So again, that's back to strategic opportunism. And so that's the way I characterize that. What's that got to do with my faith? What that's got to do with my faith is my understanding as I teach it, is that God is asking us to be alive. And so that Arrhenius line, the glory of God is persons fully alive. You know, the Westminster Catechism from 1647 would say, what is the chief end of man? The shorter answer is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. Okay, so that sounds really religious, right? So to glorify God is to bring God glory, right? Okay, use the word glory in a sentence that wouldn't sound weird at the office. Right? Does anybody ever use the word glory? Okay, this is a good time of year for it. Yeah, give me a sentence with glory in it that's not religious.
Sports good.
Yes, a glory hog, okay. Or the dunk was glorious.
A glorious day.
What's that?
A glorious day.
It's a glorious day. Right, yeah. You know, I mean, right now in New York, I mean, the tulips are just going berserk. Right? The tulips are out in all their glory, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when the tulips are out in all their glory, I'm teaching, right? Yeah. Okay. Just what are they doing?
They're doing what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing what they do. They're tulips, right? Big time. They make everybody happy. Yeah, absolutely. So walking down Park Avenue just like go nuts. You know? And so when this is why natural revelation works. So when things are being themselves unrestrainedly, right, they're profoundly alive. And so I kind of get a twofer. I am trying to help people. I'm trying to help Sam Samming, right? So what would Samming look like? Well, that turns out to be kind of tricky. If you're one of these consciousness-bearing, free will, growing till the end of time beings, as opposed to like a rock, you know, then it's trickier. So the discovery of what it is Samming looks like is part of the Samming deal. And so helping you do that, you know, it turns out to be what animates me. So I look Dave-like when I'm doing that work. If I do that well and I have some kind of supportive work on your life as well, then that brings glory to God. The aliveness turns into something that is both, you know, heartwarming, human-making, and eventually life-giving. So that's what I think the faith is about.
So I have a question that might be off base. We've been spending a great
Finally, yeah.
So we've been spending a great deal of time talking about work. And
Yeah.
I care a little bit more about rest. And
Ah.
where does rest fit in the context of
Honey, you want to comment on that? That's my dear wife.
You make exceptions.
Well, no, I mean, right now, we actually are having kind of a long, she's accepted a position I've taken with which she does not agree. So I have accepted that this is the year of the book. And the way I hold that is you don't do all that work to create something, in this case the book, to have a baby and then just go out in the hospital parking lot and drop it on his head. So right now I've made the decision that when the book calls, I go. You know, so, and I'm not resting here, I'm working my butt off. I'm working harder than I did in my 30s. And I'm mostly tired. So I'm not doing the rest of it. And I think that's the right sacrifice, but, you know, or am I just self-aggrandizing and trying to be the author, you know? I don't know. You know, I'm a sucker for an ego play. So I've got to be on my own ground. So that having been said, Andy Crouch right now is saying interesting things about Sabbath, some other people saying things about Sabbath. The concept of rest is renewal. And so there's rest of tiredness, and there's rest of renewal. You know, so the biblical concept of Sabbath is about renewal. And if we don't have some distance from, we can't appreciate. So gratitude is really the key attribute you're looking for. If I'm operating healthily in the world, gratitude should be a hallmark of my existence. I would argue. I can make that case. Let's just state it. You know, then I have to have some distance to see things well enough to go, ooh, nice. You know, and so Sabbath creates the space to allow recognition and the refreshment of being grateful enough to be renewed. If I'm constantly in it, I'm never stopping long enough to recognize it, and in that recognition, I'm not being renewed. When we were at EA in the early days of Electronic Arts, I ran the product development organization, and because it's a rapid-fire deal and it's a high, I mean, lots of SKUs, stock keeping in lots of products at relatively low price, sold in high volumes, like bam, 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 bam. You know, we were shipping products constantly, and every time we ship a product, and as the development organization released a product into manufacturing, then we had 3 others in 15 different states of development. So you're always pregnant. You're just never done. And I suddenly realized my whole team were demoralized, and we were killing it. Because we always had 5 or 10 things to be very articulately worried about. So I instituted a policy. Every time we ship a product, we will stop and be happy for 60 seconds. Like it or not. And I bought a bunch of the little Tweety things and the paper hats for a small child's birthday party. And so at my staff meeting each week, we would run down the product status list really quickly. And if the product shipped that week, and almost every week it did, then whichever product team lead had shipped the product, had released it to manufacturing, put on the big bear hat, and all the rest of us just put on the little hats. We passed out the tweeters and kind of go, the celebrating will commence now. And for 6, we do this completely synthetic celebration for 60 seconds. And after a couple of weeks of that, people actually began to get into it. And just like something, put a little something in there. You do the best you possibly can. It did backfire one day because we were right in fact, I had just shipped a product, so I had to bear it, right? And we go, like this, and a very, very serious venture capitalist, one of the most powerful guys in all of Silicon Valley, who was a major investor, was interviewing the VP of sales in the room next door, and he comes to me, blows the door, and he goes, "What's going on here?" And I look up and go, "Well done, we're celebrating with the bear." We are celebrating according to policy. And he goes, "Will it last long?" I go, "No, 60 seconds max." He goes, "Good." There goes that career. Okay. Anyway, so it's stuff like that. But I think Sabbath is important. Talk to my wife; she's really good at it.
So 90 minutes has gone fast. We've got one more. So Cindy, you're the lucky one.
Oh, thank you. A few years ago, David Brooks was the graduation speaker here, and he said something that I have been thinking about ever since then, and I wonder what you think of it. I think he talks about it in his book about character, but he said that a lot.
Resume values and eulogy values, the characters.
Yeah. And so he talks about how a lot of college students don't have a passion in life yet.
Yep.
And that we constantly are emphasizing that whole thing about, you got to do your passion and then you'll be happy. And he said it has more to do with, just going out into the world and somehow being exposed to the needs of the world,
Right.
And he talks about the woman who saw this terrible fire and people were jumping out the windows and she became the champion for, work safety and stuff like that. And she wouldn't have planned on doing that in her life, And you talked a lot about kind of how life falls into place over time for things that we haven't expected, but I thought that was a really interesting point, just because there's so much emphasis on passion. I just wondered what you think of that.
Yeah, actually, David and I have had a chance to talk about that. What David's getting at in the reason he wrote the Character, which is really a clever attempt, I think reasonably successful attempt at inviting people in a secular society into the nobility of spiritual formation without requiring them to have signed on to a spiritual story. And he's using the narrative of compelling individuals, not unlike Hamilton or Hank, to kind of say, yeah, I need some of that too. Hence the resume virtues and the eulogy virtues. And that we don't invest in the eulogy virtues anymore because the substructures of society that used to take responsibility for that, have fallen away largely. And we certainly live in a post, religious tradition-centric culture in this country. As Hanover might demonstrate, the town square used to have the school on one side, the courtroom on the other side, the library on the other side, and the church on the other side. And these were, the domains of human endeavor that would inform our common experience on the common. So where's the common? So the common's the common. So that's what David's trying to get after. And the thing about the passion deal that he's saying, and I agree with him on this, it's the outside in versus inside out. So if I have to be passionate, it's really just, frankly, it is about it. Now, it's better if you can be in it too. So Frederick Buechner's famous one-liner in Where is Calling Found, where your deep gladness and the world's deep need meet, right? Henri Nouwen, where does ministry and contemplation intersect? Compassion. Compassion, cum passio, with feeling. Feeling the feeling of the other person. So, being with you, witnessing. So if you want to have your longing informed, go hang out in places that will break your heart. So Brian Stevenson's, Equal Justice Initiative, and the book Just Mercy will talk about the 4 things you need to do. He's trying to bring justice back into the prison system. And one of them was, get proximate. Get next to reality, get next to problems, and let your proximity to them inform your heart. So if you're just sitting on your couch waiting for your passion to arise, it's going to arise out of you. How about it arises in you from the world? Go into the world and then have your heart be a place where passion can land. It's not from you, it's in you. It's not the same thing. Not the same thing. So get out. Are we done? Okay.
Let's give Dave a quick round of applause.